Instructions for accessing subtitles in a language other than English are included on our board meetings webpage as well as in the description below. Instrucciones para acceder a los subtítulos en un idioma que no sea el inglés se incluyen en nuestra página web de reuniones de la Junta, así como en la descripción a continuación.
Good evening and welcome to the Ross Valley School District Board of Trustees regular meeting. Today is June 26, 2024, and I am calling our meeting to order at 6:30. We have 4 trustees present in person at the school district office here. Myself, Rachel Litwack, Chris Lindles-Cobb, Daniel Cassidy, and Shelley Hamilton. Trustee Ryan O'Neill is not able to attend today. We also have our cabinet members, Superintendent Trahan, Chris Carson, Julia Walcott, Eric Sable is not here, and Teresa Machado and Sean Miller. Our meeting is being... Oh, I'm here. We can start. Our meeting is being live streamed via YouTube, and the link's on our website and the agenda. So there will be a 60-second delay between the meeting and the YouTube live stream. An audio recording of the meeting will be made available to the public on our district website within 72 hours of the meeting. And with that, I will move on to procedural items, which the first item is Pledge of Allegiance and Democratic Reflection and Mission. Today we're just going to do a pledge. If you'd like to stand, Jen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And next item is adopting the agenda and time allocations as listed. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right, motion to a second?
I'll second it.
All right, motion and a second. Shelley?
Aye.
Daniel?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Rachel? Aye. All right.
I have a procedural question about that. If we are the ones who actually set the agenda, is it a conflict of interest if we make a motion to approve the actual time allocations since we actually set the time allocations?
Well, they're like guidelines. I don't think they're
Okay, great. Just want to make sure
set in stone.
we're not, sending the wrong message if we say, I approve of that. We're the ones who sent it, set it up. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
I don't see an issue with that. So next item is public comment regarding items not on the open session agenda. Do we have any public comment cards or public who would like to speak? Just please state your name and affiliation.
Katie Rice, Marin County Board of Supervisors. And I have here a resolution that our board adopted on May 21st in advance of your May 29th board meeting at which you are recognizing some pretty spectacular individuals. This resolution is recognizing Marcy Trahan for her many, many years of service, decades in the Ross Valley in so many different positions, many of which we ran parallel courses in. I just wanted to be able to be here personally to present this. I couldn't be here on the 29th to thank Marcy for everything you've done for our kids, for our schools, for our community and the county. And thank you personally and professionally. You just are incredibly professional, incredibly warm and steady. And this school district has been so fortunate to have you in every single role you have played. Anyway, I just wanted to personally be able to hand this over to you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Ourselves were best friends. Have a great meeting. Happy summer to all of you.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
All right. No further public comments. All right. So next item is correspondence and communication to the board. There's 2 exchanges here. I'm hoping everybody just read those. Is there any comment on either of those? Moving on, our item D is next, and that's presentation and/or action items. The first one is recommended approval of acceptance of cash donation to Manor School from the Lloyd J. Withers and Sandra E. Compagno Trust of $75,693.
All right, and I'm very thrilled as
being in the Ross Valley School District for 32 years, I have not known the district to ever receive such a gift and a donation to any of our schools. And knowing what Sandra and Lloyd gave to our students, to our school community, with Sandra being a kindergarten teacher at Manor School for so many years. I didn't do the math. I've had COVID, and this is my first day of having my brain somewhat about me, and testing negative finally. And also with Lloyd as our Director of Maintenance and Operations. And so together as a team that they were, as husband and wife, but also as folks who gave their blood, sweat, and tears and their life to the Ross Valley School District, to the students, the staff, and our community, for them to even think of leaving anything to Manor School, which is was Sandra's home, and also, of course, one of the 5 locations, well, 6 if we include our district office, 7 if we include the maintenance yard, because they used to be on separate locations when Lloyd was with us, is that they gave to so much to our schools and community, and that they would even think to, upon their passing, leave anything to our students and our children and our schools is just phenomenal and amazing. And we do have a board policy that allows the districts to accept such gifts. And so in reviewing their gift to Manor School, the only thing that they asked is it go to Manor School. And then it will be up to Peg and staff working with, I won't be here. Tonight is my last meeting in the Ross Valley School District, but with our new superintendent, Tyler Graff, and with Chief Business Official Chris Carson and Julia Walcott as our assistant superintendent, determining the use of that money that they've given. And so their purpose of giving it to the district is not in violation of any reason why this district would not accept, the board would not accept the donation. And as part of a long-standing practice in the Ross Valley School District and built into our roundtable agreement, we do have in the Ross Valley School District ensuring that all of our students, no matter which school they attend, have equal access and equal opportunity at their school. And it's been the purpose of the roundtable agreement to ensure that no matter where a child goes, that they do have equity of access to programs, enrichment opportunities, and so on. So as we have always looked at accepting any kind of a donation into our schools, the superintendent, as I mentioned, with the staff who we'll be working with, will be making the determination as to how the money will be used at Manor School. And then ensuring that as we look at if there's any capital improvements that'll be made with the money, and or anything that is added to what the students might have access to, the school would have access to because of this gift, we'll be looking at ensuring that when we look at any type of similar or capital improvements or other improvements at any of the other schools, that will have equity across the board in that. So this $75,000+ is a huge benefit to our schools, to our students. And so knowing that Sandra didn't have any children, Lloyd has a daughter who lives in Washington, I contacted Doretta, knowing that Doretta Rozier-Gall and her family have been a longtime family friends. And as I remember seeing an email from Doretta, Sandra's the reason why the Rozier-Galls chose Fairfax to be their home, and why they chose Manor School to be where they sent their children, 3 children. And we have tonight Doretta, her husband Randy, and their son Julian. And now that Julian is an adult, and he happens to also be married to another Ross Valley School District graduate who is a teacher in the Novato Unified School District. And she went to the same elementary school as my kids, Wade Thomas, a year ahead of my older daughter. We're happy and pleased that Julian would like to also give something on behalf of Lloyd and Sandra, and he'll be creating a bench to commemorate. And so part of what we'll be using the money for is the materials that you'll need to build the bench, and also the plaque that we'll be putting on the bench to have everybody know that the wonderful gift that Sandra and Lloyd left Manor School. So very happy tonight to have the Rozier-Gall family here as we accept this gift and the board takes action to accept the gift from Sandra and Lloyd. It's just an amazing gift that they've given Manor School. We have our principal, Peg Minicozy, here tonight too. So not sure if any of you wanted to say a couple of words.
Well, I would just, on behalf of Gretchen Mathis.
And Gretchen.
Yeah. She's going to be our TK teacher next year, but she's been a long time kindergarten teacher at Manor, and you knew Sandra, right? And Lloyd
yeah. And you know what? I have to correct you.
Uh-oh.
It is totally within the character of Miss CW to give to Manor School. It's not out of the realm of possibility, right? She thought of Manor as her second home. And all of those children were her family. So of course they were included in the trust. You know, we have big shoes to fill at Manor, right? And I have very big feet, and I've been trying. But and all we know is dedicated teachers, right, Greta? That's all we know. Sandra Stein's way above because she gave her life. That was her love. She went the extra step. So, it means a lot for those of us that know her and. Like you got to have her. I taught with her. We were very lucky. 1 year.
And I didn't have the honor to know her, but I just want to, on behalf of our staff and our community, it's with immense gratitude that we received this gift. And we are going to make sure that, and we pledge that we're going to make them proud in terms of what we do with the money. It's going to go right to the kids, a lot of it to the TKK1 yard, what the children there can have access to. But again, so thank you so much.
That would make her very, very happy. Really happy. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So bringing it back up to the board. Is that public comment? Sorry, do you have public comment?
Oh, yes, public comment. But I think we come to the board. There's any questions?
Any questions, clarification, comments? Leave it, take it out for a public comment. If anyone else would like to
I
say?
just have a question. Is this kept as separate funds from our general funds, or is it commingled and we have an accounting as to how we spend it?
So it will be in the general fund, but we're going to set up a separate account for it. So it'll be accounted for separately, both the money as well as any of the expenses.
Great. Perfect. Great. And as a gift, we don't have it, and we're a nonprofit. Obviously, we don't have any other obligation except just to take it in kind and disperse it in kind. That's great. Thank you.
Well, I'm not commenting it until we bring it back again, right? Sure. So I'll hold off my comments. But do we have any public comment? Anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay. Please come up and
Just one.
Yeah.
Do you know what the plaque is going to say? Has that been
Not yet.
figured out?
I think that'll be, up to the work that when Manor School and the staff begin to work on it, I think the words will come with that. But if you have any ideas.
Oh, we're not going to be short on ideas.
Okay, great.
What's appropriate?
Yeah. The appropriateness would be to ensure that any child who can see it and read it can understand it.
Sure.
And I think that will be the beautiful words that are going to be on the plaque.
Okay. And do we know the size of it? Do we know where it's going to go?
Not yet.
None of that? Okay.
No, I think part of what, as Julian, you begin to work on the bench and you're going to be looking at, your dimensions and things like that, it might be helpful to build in because as you know that when you put the plaque on the wood, that you want to make sure there's enough landscape or, real estate there to make sure it holds and stays. But I think that's something that you all can work on with Peg and the Manor staff around that. But that would be great to have your involvement in, especially because you know Sandra and Lloyd so well.
Yeah. Are there any things that you want to share about them with us that come to mind in terms of?
I think something that I've been thinking about a lot recently because I've just retired is how really truly your classroom is your second home and your school becomes part of your family, all of those children and all of the people that you work with. And I think because
Sandra didn't have any children of her own, those children really and truly, as Gretchen said, were hers. And we can speak to that just in how she adopted our children. Sandra and Lloyd became well known as our West Coast grandparents for our kids. They just took us under their wing, and she watched out for my children always, the way that she watched out for everyone else's children. She was just such an incredibly kind and generous person. It's hard for me to talk about her without getting pretty emotional. And Lloyd was the same. They were our family. And so we were just so touched that they did this for our school, because Manor was our school. I was lucky enough to work at Manor for a few years, way back when. And so it's always held a very special place in our heart, and we know how special it was to her. And their combined time in the district, I don't know, it's probably 50 plus years. I think she was 35 years in the district, Marcy, where you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, she's, we have her listed as being in the school district from
68 to 2003.
1968 to 2003, and Lloyd working in the district from 1983 until his retirement in 2001.
Yeah, that's a lot of years.
Did they meet, do you know,
Through Ross Valley.
through Ross Valley? I was wondering.
Yeah, they did. And so we are just so touched by their gift to our community. We'd love to stay involved with the process. And of course, our son offered to make the bench. So it's very, very special for our family. I wish that we could all be here together, but it wasn't possible. But we're really, really proud to be here, the three of us, representing Sandra and Lloyd and their community, which is our community.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. I appreciate it. All right. So with that, any other comments from our board members here?
Just continued gratitude and thank you all for being here and sharing a part of them with us by you being here and continuing to do that, and looking forward to having you stay involved.
The same thing. I'm just very thankful for them. I never met them, but clearly they were the kind of people that I would have liked to have known.
So do you make a formal?
Yeah, somebody like to make a motion?
Formal motion to accept?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the acceptance of the cash donation to Manor School from the Lloyd J. Withers and Sandra E. Compagno Trust of $75,693.
Second?
Second?
All right, first and second, Chris.
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
Daniel?
Aye.
Rachel? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Next item is the presentation and discussion on the parcel tax feasibility survey results by Godby Research.
All right, and let me take
Happy summer.
Happy summer.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Let's bring you good and funny so I come volunteer next year. All right. So I'm going to be getting Brian Godby on the phone.
Hello, it's Brian Godby.
Hi, Brian. It's Marcy Trahan with Ross Valley.
Hi, Marcy.
Hi. Good. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. Let's
Ready
do.
to go.
Great. Let me do a little sound check to be sure that everybody can hear you. And Sean, you've got okay. Alrighty. So it looks like we do have 4 trustees here with us this evening. We have Shelley Hamilton, Rachel Litwack, Chris Landels-Cobb and Daniel Cassidy. Ryan O'Neill, one of our trustees, was not able to make it this evening. And we have Chris Carson here, as you know, who he will be moving the slide deck forward. So as you need him to move the slide deck forward, if you can just say next slide.
Sure.
Okay,
No problem.
great. Alrighty, and can all the trustees hear Brian? Okay, wonderful. Alrighty, so what we have tonight is Brian Godby with Godby Research providing the results of the parcel tax feasibility survey that the board had approved, contracting with Godby Research to do the survey. And so Brian's here with us via phone this evening to provide an overview of the outcome of the survey results. And so Brian, you can go ahead. Let me just ask trustees, do you have any questions before Brian begins, or can he begin? Okay, alrighty. And then, all right, Brian, so go ahead, you may start.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Happy to present the results of the survey this evening. Chris, if we could go to slide 2.
He's on that slide.
Okay, great. So this is just a brief overview. We looked at a variety of different things in the survey. We looked at support for, obviously, a parcel tax, and we sampled it flat rate versus per square foot. We looked at things we could spend the money on. We looked at informational, which are positive arguments. We looked at critical statements. We looked at rate and duration issues. And then, of course, the entire sample was built on a stratified demographic and behavioral sample to ensure that it's representative of the community. Slide 3, please. A little bit more about the methodology. It was a phone and online survey. Yes, there are still some people that prefer to take surveys via landline, and we want to make sure that everybody has the ability to take the survey in the sample regardless of technology. So there are some landlines, many more cells, calls, and the majority comes from the online portion of the survey, which is just the world we live in today. The universe was likely November 2024 voters in the school district. We were in the field in early to mid-June. The average phone survey was 25 minutes long. That's still our metric for determining the length of the survey. The sample size was 402, which gives us a margin of error based on our stratifications of plus or minus 4.82%. Next slide, please, Chris. And the next one after that. So everybody should be looking at slide 5, agreement with statement the district needs additional funding. So here, this is kind of a generic version of a ballot test that gives you a little bit of an idea of where people are at. Do you agree or disagree that the district needs additional funding? And if you add this strongly and somewhat together, you see we're at 55% agree and versus 27% disagree. It's a 2-to-1 positive to negative ratio, and there's also about 18% in round numbers that don't know or don't have an opinion. Obviously, that for parcel tax, that's short of where we need to be. This is not specifically a ballot question, but it does give you a sense of the voters just at a high level. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned in the introduction, we did ballot questions for both a flat rate parcel tax, and this is the results for that flat rate. There's also another question you'll see in just a moment, which is a per square foot parcel tax. A respondent got one version or the other. So there's a random sample within the random sample. And so this is the first one of those, split sample A, as we call it. You see the wording for the measure on the right-hand side of the slide. It complies with all the state laws. It's not more than 75 words. It has a tax rate, which is $335. It shows how much it raises annually, which is also required by state law, which is $3.1 million. It has a term. In this case, it is until ended by voters, which is another way of saying in perpetuity. And again, this was vetted by your legal counsel. So all of this matches state law. And then it had a 3% annual adjustment There's a citizens oversight committee, senior exemptions, which are typical for parcel taxes. When you look at the definitely yes and probably yes, you'll see, first of all, two bars. One is the 2024 November election. The second one is a smaller subset of people who are likely to vote in an off-year election. It's mail ballot in either case, but it's a smaller turnout in an off-year election. So for the
Ryan.
November 24th, yes.
Sorry, Chris Landels.
Hi, Ryan, it's Chris Landels Cobb. I just wanted to just ask you, as we start to chop this up and look at the percentage and the responses, I want to understand the levity of the sample size and the comparison of that sample size based on previous successful calls of whether something was going to pass or not, because 402 of a likely voting population of 15,600 is about 2.5%.
Yeah. So response rate is not an accurate way to deem the success of a sample. We look at what's called a confidence interval of 95%, and then we look at the response rates. And so if we go back, which we don't have to go back to, but I can go back, the margin of error is a different percentage than the response rate. Response rate, to be honest and completely candid, in doing this for 35 years, is just not relevant. It's the margin of error that is relevant, which is a much more complicated statistical calculation, and that's plus or minus 4.82% overall.
Okay.
It is slightly higher for the split samples, but to answer your basic question, which is, how accurate have we been with this kind of sample, of the measures that we have recommended be on the ballot, we've won 95% of them. Of the measures that we've recommended not be on the ballot, 100% of them have lost. Now, our job is not to do that, right? Our job is to help you put a successful measure on the ballot. So we don't really look at the downside, but we do look at the upside, and we think that 95% is pretty darn accurate.
Okay.
And we could have an offline conversation about all the national polling and why I think it's not at the same level or same high standard.
I'm new to this rodeo, and I just had a basic question about the number of people that you talk to and how you're basing the outcome on that population percentage.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it is that the calculation of the margin of error at the 95% confidence level. What 95 confidence level means is that 95 out of 100 times, if we did the same sample, we would get the same result within that 4.8% margin of error. Now, if you think of a national survey, and let's say I just looked at one that was 3,500 in 6 states, that's far, far fewer people out of the population in those 6 swing states. And if we did ironically, the way this works is if you were to have done the same 400 in Los Angeles, which is obviously much, much larger than Ross Valley, the margin of error would probably be 5%, plus or minus, because of the stratification and the sampling approach, which makes sure that it is representative of, in fact, we didn't talk about this, but we use 16, well, in this case, 15, because you don't have districts, but we use 15 different demographic variables to make sure that the sample is stratified and weighted to be reflective of community. That answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So in adding the definitely yes and probably yes together here, you see we're at 51.4%. With that, in round numbers, 5% margin of error. That could be 56.4. It could also be 46.4. So that's how the margin of error works. In the slightly smaller turnout of 2025, we're at a slightly higher level, but statistically there's not a significant difference because of the margin of error of 52.9. Next slide, please. So the next slide is the other part of the split sample. This is the 17 cent per square foot And again, the ballot question is on the right-hand side, and it meets all the statewide legal requirements as vetted by your legal counsel. And 17 cents is the rate per square foot up to 9,999 square feet. So there's a cap in there. $199 per unimproved parcel. And that would provide about $3 million annually. It's not exactly the same revenue as the other one just because of the complexities of the two methodologies. It would still be implemented by voters. There's still a 3% annual adjustment. There's still citizens oversight and senior exemptions. And as before, we have the same bullets on what we might spend the money on. In this case, we're a little bit higher. We're at 54.3 for the November election, and for a 2025 election, we're at 54.2, which is actually a little bit lower. So one goes up, the other comes down a little bit. But the bottom line here for either methodology is this measure requires 2/3, no matter how you slice it, and there's a long way to go. Is the unfortunate reality. Now, I'll also mention something that's maybe a little off topic, but a lot of school districts have been saying, well, what am I hearing about this citizens initiative? Can I do a simple majority measure by doing a citizens initiative? The answer is yes, you can. The complexity is it's really designed for cities. So in a district like yours, where you have multiple cities and jurisdictions, it's difficult to do it because the city has to call the election. For a school district that is coterminous with a city, it's a little easier to do. But again, still the city has to call the election. So that's the complexity there. Next slide, please. So the next set of questions is one that was asked in a random order, and you see all of them here. We no longer have the 75-word limit that we do for a ballot question, so we can ask all the kinds of things you might spend the money on. Well, asked in a random order, these are presented in the order that they ranked, and that's based on the scale you see across the bottom of the slide. Much more likely 2, somewhat more likely 1, somewhat less likely -1, much less likely -2, and that creates what we call an intensity scale, which is how we rank them. It's a really accurate way of ranking based on what percentages fall into what category, but also what the intensity is. Because there's certainly a difference between something that's 40% much more likely and 20% somewhat more likely, which is 60, of course, but you could have the opposite. It could be 20% much more likely and 40% somewhat more likely, which is still 60, but they're not the same 60. So that bias is eliminated by this intensity scale. But we do, because we need to put it in the context of the 2/3 threshold, we do look at the amount much more likely and somewhat more likely added together, and that's what you see reflected by the arrow, the blue arrow range. So in our top grouping, statistically tied, you see there are 4 items starting at 74% for attract and retain highly qualified teachers, followed at almost the same level is maintain educationally sound class sizes, K through 8, protect core academic programs in science, technology, engineering, and math. We spell out STEM because there are certainly a lot of seniors that are not familiar with the academic acronyms. Protect core academic programs in reading and writing is last in this group, and you see a range of about 9% from high to low. The next tier is protect core academic programs in arts and music. And you probably say, well, how come one's 65.6 and the other is 66.2? And that's because of the intensity that is measured by the scale. So the first one has a higher, much more likely, and the second one has a higher, somewhat more likely. So that's why it lines up the way it is. But for protect core academic programs in arts and music is next. Then preserve school libraries, then preserve high-quality education programs. In the first tier, we were above or right at the 2/3. In the second tier, we're right at and then below the 2/3 threshold. So the items in the second tier really aren't helping us as much as those in the first tier, given the 2/3 requirement. And then as we go to the third tier, they're just all below 60%, so they just don't help us get to the 2/3 threshold. Chris, next slide, please. So this is the informational statement. This is a similar methodology, although the scale is truncated. These are essentially positive arguments, so it doesn't make sense to people that a positive would make them less likely. So we just have a scale that's much more likely, somewhat more likely, no effect, and you can see we've got similar scores for each of those. It creates the same intensity scale. It all works mathematically and statistically the same, but the difference is you just can't compare a 1.18 on this scale with the previous question set. However, you can compare the percentages that are much more likely and somewhat more likely added together. And again, that puts it in context of the 2/3 threshold. So at the top of this list, we had having a great teacher in the classroom is the most important element to providing quality education at 71%, so that's certainly above the 2/3 threshold. The Ross Valley School District is losing some of our best teachers and school employees to other nearby districts at almost the same level. Many local teachers are struggling with high cost of housing. Is third. Measure will ensure teacher and school employee compensation is competitive with neighboring districts. The annual adjustment will help keep teachers keep up with the rising cost of living in the Bay Area. And then accountability provision, no money can be used for administrators or administrator salaries. The good news is we start at above the 2/3. The bad news is by the time we get to the bottom, we're not really getting to the 2/3 level and we need to be successful. Next slide, please. So the next slide continues that same trend. We're in the low 60s. So while these may seem like they're good arguments, they're just not helping us get to the 2/3 threshold. And the next slide, which is informational statement 3, here we even dip below the simple majority threshold. Not that they're not positive and not that they're not good things to do. They're just not helping us get the voters to the 2/3 threshold. Okay, so next slide, please. So at this point in the survey, we have introduced the measures. We have talked about what we would spend the money on. We've talked about the positives. So we come back to our ballot question the second time, and the first one again is split sample A, and that's the $335 flat rate parcel tax. And you see that we do get a bump in both election environments. So the November 24 universe, we go from 51.4 to 62.8. And that's certainly what we would expect to see after people hear the positives. Same thing is true in the 25 election environment, which we go from 53 to 61 in round numbers. The good news is there's a bump. The bad news is we don't get in either of those elections over the 2/3 threshold. And being 4 or 5 points away, 6 points away is a long way for a 2/3 measure. Next slide, please. So the next slide looks at the per square foot version of the parcel tax. And again, you see bumps from where we started. We started at 54.3 for the November election, and we get to 60.7, almost 61. In the 25 election environment, we go from 54 to 61, so about the same bump. But again, we're not getting to the 2/3 threshold that we need to be successful. And even if you were to apply the margin of error and round it up to 5%, 61 plus 5 is 66. So we're still below the 66.6667% that we need to be successful. Next slide, please. So now that we've sort of seen what the upside is, we look intentionally at the negative arguments to see what impact they have, obviously, on the downside. The methodology here is largely the same as the informational statements. We don't put a minus sign in front of them to make them seem worse. The higher they are, the worse they are for us. And at the top of the list, we have the measure as a forever tax, which is the other way of saying until ended by voters or in perpetuity. And that's 50.4%, at least somewhat more likely to vote now. So that's a big problem because it's well above the 33.4% threshold necessary to defeat a parcel tax that requires a 2/3 yes vote. Cities and counties have increased taxes. The elementary school district has put tax measures on the ballot in 2010, 2012, and 2018. The high school district has also increased taxes, and now both are back at it again. As you may know, last night Tam did decide on a bond amount, and they're, for all intents and purposes, moving forward. So this statement is true, and it obviously has a big negative impact at the low 50% level. Residents and businesses are struggling with inflation, high gas prices, groceries, mortgage rates, etc. So the economic uncertainty is a large problem as well. The 3% cost of living adjustment built into the measure means that the rate will automatically increase every year without voter approval. That's also at the 50%, at least somewhat more likely to vote no. Next slide, please. So the next slide is the rest of the negatives, and you see that the first few here are in tier 1 as well. So they're in that 50% range, and potential negatives as well, well above the 33.4% that the opposition needs to defeat the measure, including the high school district and the elementary are asking for large tax increases. We can't afford new taxes. The district has too many high-paid administrators. Doesn't matter if that's not true. It's a typical anti-tax argument. The average homeowner will pay $335 a year, the same as much larger commercial owners. That was just asked of the people in split sample A, which is a negative for the flat rate, and obviously it's at that near the 50% threshold. Then we go to tier 2, which are starting to get down to the 33.4% level, but just slightly higher than that. Salaries of employees increase automatically every year based on contracts. And don't be fooled, the average homeowner will pay $223. That's doing the math for the per square foot measure, and based on the average home size in the district. So now that we've heard the negatives, we come back to our ballot question a third time. Next slide. And again, first you see the flat rate version. So we started at 54, we went up to 61 in round numbers, and we're now back down to the 52. To 61.5. So that's about a 0.7% drop from where we were at the high point. Because of the structure of the survey, which is intentional, we want to see how high we go and then how low we go. You can average the second and third, but we're still in the low 60s and nowhere near the 2/3 threshold that we need to be successful. The same thing is true for the 2025 universe, which there's about a 2.2% drop from the midpoint, and the average would be right around 60%, maybe 60.5, but again, below the 2/3 threshold. Next slide, please. So because we didn't know where we were going to wind up, we had what we call fallbacks, and the first one of those is that instead of 335, what if it was 295? And that's obviously chosen because it is below what we call a psychological ceiling, just like buying things at Target, where everything's priced $19.95. Voters do support measures at a higher level if they're below those psychological ceilings. In this case, the $300 mark. And you see that we do get a really no bump at all, because we were at 61.5, we're now at 60.7 in November, and in the 25 election environment, we were at 59.1, we're at 59.4. Basically, that's not significant for either of those. And what I think it suggests is there isn't a rate sensitivity issue that's going on in Ross Valley. So dropping it at least by this nominal amount isn't helping. Perhaps if we dropped it below 200, there might be that's a big jump, but we did not test that. Next slide, please. So the next slide looks at the per square foot again. So for November, we started at 54.3. We went up to 60.7. We're now back down to 52.6. It's an 8-point jump or drop from the high point. So, we're probably somewhere around 56% if we were to average the second and third test. And, that's again, not where we need to be for a 2/3 measure. Even with the margin of error as before, we don't get to where we need to be. And the same thing is true in the 25 election environment. Now, next slide, please. On this one, we also had a fallback. So we picked a rate that matched that 295 or roughly did. So instead of 17% or 17 cents per square foot, what if it was 15 cents per square foot? And you see here that we're at 52.3. So it's virtually the same in November, and 52.5. Again, physically, there's no difference between the 17 cent and 15 cent rates. And obviously, we're not seeing any rate sensitivity, just like we didn't for the flat rate. And, we're hoping that we would go up, particularly when we're not where we need to be, but we're still not getting there. And next slide, please. So the next slide is that, what if there was no annual adjustment? So we're taking out that adjustment, 3%, because COLAs sometimes don't do well. And again, we're not getting any kind of bump there, and people are just stuck at this 54, 55% threshold for either measure. And so that's the presentation that I have for this evening. Certainly happy. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped over a couple things. We also had an 8-year duration. And that's slide 21, Chris, sorry. And the same thing is true here. We looked at, instead of until end by voters, what if it was 8 years? And then that doesn't help us either. We're still at that 55% level. And then the final question is on slide 22, and that is the future of the economy. And we've been asking this since the pandemic started. We asked it back in the late aughts and early teens because of the economic downturn then. This number, 17%, is about the norm now. It would have been considered very low in the Great Recession. It is not the lowest I've seen. The lowest I've seen in the last week is 13% better. But the problem is people are really, they're just disaffected from the economy. Despite the fact that GDP is up, unemployment is almost as low as it's ever been, and job creation is on the rise. Stock market on any given day could be at or near the all-time high, particularly the S&P. And inflation is half of what it was at the high point of the pandemic. People still are unsettled about the economy. And it is just the case virtually everywhere. We're seeing similar numbers. Again, some are even lower than this, but this is obviously not a good place to be. We have nowhere near return to the pre-pandemic levels. And whether that's the pandemic or the economy or the price of gas, it's hard to tell exactly what's driving it. This is the Michigan Consumer Confidence Study, so we only have one question on this, but it's not a good indication. So that's the end of the presentation. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that this is one of the ones you wouldn't recommend going about it.
I don't think that you should be racing toward the November ballot. because of the data that we see here, and more, even on top of that, because we don't know what's going to happen to the economy, we don't know what the impact of the presidential election is going to be on perceptions of the economy. And I think that's potentially a big driver in why things are so low. But we also have a variety of other measures on the ballot. We saw that there was, in the negative, substantial opposition to this measure because there are other taxes on the ballot, and that includes, of course, the high school measure, but it also includes the regional housing bond, which is $20 billion in round numbers. I think there's still some debate on what that's going to wind up being, but I'm not working on that, so I don't know for sure. But some of the anti-tax groups throughout the Bay Area have really focused on that, and they're starting to use the tax tsunami term, which is novel. I haven't heard that before. I think that racing to this election in November, you just don't have time to prepare. While the numbers are not substantially different in the 25 election, what is different is we take it out of the context of the presidential and all these other tax measures, and it just becomes about Ross Valley. And maybe even more importantly, you have more time to prepare. Now, if you were to decide not to go and say, let's think about next spring, you don't have to make that decision now and you don't want to. But if you do that, you need to sort of say, we're going to go out and explain the needs of the community starting, right as soon as school comes back in the fall.
I have a couple clarification questions. This looks like I know that we have a parcel tax that is expiring, and then we had talked about additional parcel taxes. This looks like the questions were used the word new on it, so that the people interviewing were just considering what they were responding to was a new parcel tax. Was there any? How do you think that relates to like a parcel tax extension?
I don't think it does. This is, you're correct, a supplemental parcel tax, so it's on top of the current one. Parcel taxes requiring 2/3 do better if they are what we call straight renewals, which means there's no increase in the rate. Now, because you have a COLA, there's really no reason to have a tax rate increase unless you're trying to make up for this supplemental. But if you're just doing a renewal of the existing measure for an additional period of time, realizing that there is, of course, a COLA, so it is higher than it was originally, that stands a pretty good chance of being successful. We did not test it specifically because of the district's needs and our discussion with the staff and with the board representative on this. But I would say that would stand a better chance. But I don't think there's any need to rush into this November election environment for that either. Yeah, so you have 26 as an option, and it could be perhaps in the primary. It could, because it's parcel tax, unlike bond measures, you're not limited to regularly scheduled even year elections. So you could do a parcel tax renewal or a new parcel tax like this supplemental in any time in 2025 or 2026. The November 2026 environment, because it is the governor's race is an open seat, is not quite as high as the presidential turnout, but it's the second highest turnout that we'll see in a 4-year cycle.
And one other question: what is the significance or lack of significance when, for example, on slide page 8, when you're in the statements area, the features of the measure area, the informational statements area, it looks, when I look at that nicely, all of the answers clustering between 0 and 1, none of them going up to 2, none of them, they seem like, they're all within like 0.01%, 0.01 difference. Is that a normal thing that you see? Because to me, it looks like, there's not really a significant difference between any of these statements, but I just wanted to ask, is that a true assumption, that there's really not a lot of the main theme that I think I'm hearing is there's not a whole lot of differentiation between these statements, between your various kind of testing for sensitivity to different kinds of, there's just not a lot of variation going on in here. It's just kind of like a no.
I think that's largely true.
Okay.
I think that, the way this works is you have to draw a line somewhere. So there is a statistically significant difference between that top item, attract and retain highly qualified teachers at 1.09, and D, protect core academic programs in arts and music. There is not, by design, a statistical difference within tier 1 or within tier 2 or tier 3. But from high to low, from one tier to the next, there is a statistical difference. However, given that, what we see in other districts where we've got to get to the 2/3 threshold, we like to see it up to 1.2. So that would be in the high 70s when we add the much more likely and somewhat more likely together. And obviously, we're not getting there.
Got it. Okay, well, that's
okay. And by the time,
okay, that's helpful in terms of just determining statistical differences. So the statistical difference is really between the tiers. But for example, on page 9, where they're all tier 1, not a lot of statistical difference between the top one and the bottom one is what I'm hearing, because they're all tier 1.
And if you think about back to the margin of error, which is in round numbers 5%, so it's plus or minus, so 71 could be 65 and 62 could be 67.
Got it. Okay.
So you see how they overlap.
Got it. And basically all of your sensitivity testing just had no statistical differences either.
On this one, the informational statements, they're the first 2 slides are in tier 1. The third slide is in tier 2. It's starting to be significantly lower, just like we talked before. Yeah. There's a difference between tier 1 and tier 2.
Okay. All right.
This is Daniel. Are you seeing this as a national trend, these numbers, or is this consistent with others, or is this just a Marin County, Ross Valley thing?
Yeah, our work is all in California, specializing in revenue measures. We've done over $50 billion successfully on the ballot. But in the last year and a half, we have seen virtually every client that we've done multiple surveys go from okay in 2023 to not okay, or just barely okay. So everybody has been going south in 2024.
So you're not seeing us standing out as an outlier in our particular community. This is part of just a general trend.
Yeah, I think it's a general trend throughout the state, and I've talked to other consultants, not so much my actual competitors, pollsters, but the consultants that we work with have seen the same thing with their other clients that they've had other pollsters doing the work for. We've all seen exactly the same challenge.
Okay. Those were my just statistical questions.
This is very deflating.
Do we want to?
Do you want to do public comment and we can discuss?
I got lots of comments. Those are just my questions.
Yeah, questions now. We'll do comments from the public and then we can discuss. You guys have any more questions for Brian Guthrie or no? All right. So we would open it up to public comment at this time. If anyone would like to make a comment, you have 3 minutes. If not, if anyone would like to speak.
Sorry, this is a dumb question. I'm Spencer Sias. Oh, I have to
say
that.
It's just it's
sorry.
Better.
Just your name and affiliation. So
okay. I'm Spencer Sias. Hi, Marcy. I'm a former school board member sitting there, and I'm a supporter of schools and concerned about the trend that you're talking about. I believe it's real. I think everybody is dealing with just bills mounting in every single direction. So it's a very tough challenge that you're facing. My principal question is this. are we trying to maintain or are we trying to add this parcel tax? I'm sorry, I'm coming in ignorant on that. I think the big deal is to try to hold the ground you've got, and not to go and ask for extra unless it's for teacher salaries. That's where I'm at. Could you tell me that, somebody? Are we asking for extra here?
Are you asking if it's a supplemental?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm asking, are we, because we have to, we already support the district with parcel tax, correct? Right. And we want to be able to renew that. At the very least, we want to be able to renew that. If we're asking for over and above, we probably can't get it. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
We'll discuss.
Yeah, we will discuss. We don't usually reply.
Yeah, I know.
We can discuss and.
It's just us.
Right.
Anyway, thank you. I did. Just hold your ground is my strong advice here. Renew what you've got. If you're going to ask for extra, isolate it to teacher salaries. That's it. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Amy Willard from the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers. I think you're familiar with our sensible tax criteria, and we appreciate that you did look at them. We were encouraged that you poll for a per square foot parcel tax because that's been a policy goal of ours to have school districts consider that, because we've actually had teachers within the district saying to us, I'm going to get priced out of my condo by a parcel tax for the school that I work at, where I would be paying the same as the mall, and it just seems unfair to me. So I was happy to see that you did poll for that. I was disheartened to see that it didn't make much difference, but it looked like there wasn't much difference about anything. It seemed as if your voter group is kind of, as Brian Godby said, stuck. They have a view about whether they're willing to pay more taxes or not for school, and I think that comes through loud and clear. I would just weigh in on two things that were discussed here. One of them is the forever element, and I wonder whether, I don't know why you would have gone for that, honestly, because schools are very cyclical in terms of their enrollment. They also have a lot of secular changes of other sorts, like technology needs and whether the state is funding them well and so on. So I think it's really hard to convince a voter base that you need a forever tax and that it's a good idea. And I wonder whether, as people are starting to understand that until repealed by voters really means forever, because it's really hard to repeal, I wonder whether that actually queered your results, whether it got people in kind of a negative mood from the first statement, and then it kind of went downhill from there. They then got stuck. So I'm sorry that we can't test that hypothesis, but I think it was an unfortunate choice. I also would just say that, and our view about schools is that it should be 10 years or less. 8 years is preferable because, particularly within elementary school, you're trying to count kids who aren't born yet when you get into those outer years. And then the final thing I would say is that we definitely discourage going for basically choosing your voters by choosing a low turnout election where you can maybe get more of your parents to vote. And that is one of the things that we unfortunately look at as a possible trigger for opposition. So just throwing that out there. Thank you.
There's no more public comment. I'll bring it back to the board for discussion. I did want to say that we were looking at a parcel tax because we have a deficit. We're operating with a $1 million deficit. And so adding a supplemental would be to cover our deficit and help us pay our teachers. So that was the only reason we've been looking at this and considering it as a possibility. It's not because we want to spend it on something other. It's just because of the teachers and the information we've had during our negotiations over the last year and a half and how unhappy that they've been with their salaries.
And public comments at board meetings.
So many public comments and emails, so many from families, from teachers. And this, I don't think we'd be considering this. I worked on the 2018 parcel tax campaign, and I wouldn't be considering this now, especially with the supplemental, if there wasn't a teacher reason to do it. Otherwise, I don't think that we would be able to justify it.
And so what I'm hearing is that the reason that we were pulling on the supplemental was it's almost a we know we don't want to go in the hole by losing what we already have, but we also know that we need to add to it because of just being able to address the teacher pay issue that we want to be able to address. And so that's what I'm hearing is why you were pulling on the supplemental, because we were hoping that we weren't needing to ask about not having to go further in the hole by not.
And if I can just add, part of what we've been grappling with is our school district is the lowest funded school district in Marin County.
Right.
And yet, so what that means is when you talk about being able to give increases in salaries to the teachers, we're competing against districts that are funded at much higher levels. And so therefore, as we are looking at our existing parcel tax, which we are incredibly thankful for, and need to sustain the existing parcel tax in order to sustain our revenue.
Sustain our lowest place, our lowest level of funding.
And as we're looking at, with going into the 24-25 school year, Chris will then begin to do his analysis of where does Ross Valley rank in comparison to other Marin County schools based on 24-25 funding. But we've been looking at the past few years, and we know we are the lowest funded school district in Marin County. Based on the way that the state funds schools, you have your LCFF calculator, you have your base rate, you receive supplemental funds, and that's based on your population of students. And so Ross Valley, based on our population of students, we also don't have the additional or the increased funding due to our demographics. And then we're also one of the very few school districts that has been for a very long time, except for as we know into next year, we have been LCFF funded, not community funded.
Which means funded on a per student basis rather than
based on average daily attendance, as opposed to the amount of property taxes that come in and that help to fund. So that's our community funded or basic aid school districts. We are moving into community funded, but as we all know from our budget studies is that any amount of dollars from property taxes that are above that LCFF amount can put you into community funded status. It doesn't make every it's not very much. So, and then we know too, as Chris has been talking at our budget meetings and through our budget advisory council, is that we will be back into local control funding formula or LCFF in 25-26. So we're in community funded for 1 year, we bounce back out, and then we're supposed to be going back in 26-27 as far as projections look now. And so when we look at the anticipation of our revenues and being able to keep up with increasing our teacher salaries to keep competitive with Marin County is another one of the reasons of looking at a supplemental. And so as we were looking at how do we, because we need to take a look at budget reductions, and as we all know from previous conversations, we made major cuts when we went into COVID on our classified side, and we did not add a lot of positions back. We have reduced administrative staff, and we have reduced every time we have an opening, as you've heard me talk about, we take a look at the position that we have open. Do we need it? If we need it, does it need to be filled at the same number of months? So as an example, Teresa, the position she now holds used to be a 12-month position. We reduced it to 10 months. So she's in a 10-month position. Tomorrow is her last work day for the 23-24 school year, and she'll be back in August. And then we have another position here at the district office that we did that with. So we are looking at, by natural attrition, looking at reductions, and we are looking at continuing to make further reductions. But if we're going to really stay competitive salary-wise in Marin County, we need to look at increasing revenues.
Or get competitive.
Get competitive, yeah. That is that is the impetus for the district and bringing forth to you the idea of contracting with Godby Research to take a look at the feasibility of a supplemental parcel tax. So I hope that this has been helpful. It is definitely not what we wanted to hear, I think, with this. And we'll need to, as we all know, this is my last board meeting, and we have Tyler beginning with you all in the 24-25 school year. And so with that, your new governance team will be taking a look at what is next. Where do we go from here?
Yeah. Any other comments? It's definitely not what I wanted to see, but it kind of flows with what I've been hearing in the community, talking to like neighbors and constituents. There's tax fatigue right now, like a lot of tax fatigue. And I don't think it matters what the tax is for.
Do we still have?
And Brian is still on the line, yes.
Brian?
Yeah, yes, I'm here. Yeah.
When you have worked with districts who are like on the edge or in the low side and decide to go for it, like what does it take? What kind of effort would it take to overcome something like this? Like how big of an insurmountable, like what in your experience does it take if you wanted to do something like this?
You'd have to run a perfect campaign to start with, and that probably means sending out 5 pieces of direct mail. These would be from an independent campaign committee, not from the district, obviously. And so you need to raise the money for that. You need to then be IDing voters. You need to hopefully figure out a package that would reduce, if not eliminate, any potential opposition. And we heard a little bit about that from the cost person and what they prefer. So you'd have to figure that out first, I think, then run a perfect campaign. And in this particular environment, I'm not sure that the environment's going to help you. I mean, this is kind of an unprecedented situation from my research for dozens and dozens of districts and cities throughout California. We're just seeing it being very difficult in this particular election environment.
And Brian, I think. Go ahead. Sorry, finish.
Sorry, I was just going to add to that. I think it makes more sense to take a longer view of this, because I think that the task in front of you requires reaching out to the community, doing some of those things that I just mentioned, but also really explaining to them what the need is before you can put this on the ballot, whether that's 25 or 26. I don't really know the answer to that, but I think you do need a longer runway to work out some of those details. Now, the other thing to keep in mind too is if you pass the parcel tax in November of this year, you don't get to collect that money until July 1st of next year. So if you were to pass the parcel tax in June of next year, and the turnout throughout 2025 will be about the same regardless of what year or what month it is. But if you pass it in June of 2025, you still start collecting the tax on the same day of July 1st. So you don't really get the money sooner by going in November. And because I don't think you're ready for the ballot, I think taking that longer runway can only benefit you. But you're not going to get the money any sooner if you go earlier.
And so what I'm hearing is both a longer runway and a fairly large lift and investment in outreach, marketing, community relations, communications, one way or the other. Longer runway for that is better, but it's still there, is what I'm hearing. It's just you get more time to do it, but it's still a big, heavy, perfect lift. You just have more time to.
There's not much difference between 24 and 25. That's absolutely right. And 26 is, a long ways away. But
okay.
But we're going to have to do a lot of educating so people understand why we need the money. So it's clear that we need this for teacher pay and nothing else. Because otherwise, people are going to say, "I don't want another tax." But these are our teachers in our classrooms with our kids, and they need time to understand that.
Yeah. Right. A question about just listening to the underlying economics of with the unemployment rates and, inflation and indicators sort of pushing that things are getting better. I'm just curious about what what type of indicators can we look at or find comfort where we can start to re-enter and think about this again? And I get that there's tax fatigue, but one tipping of the scale, if unemployment goes up, that grows all of these numbers off even more, right? Like, I guess based on what you talked about earlier, the economic indicators are favorable, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to figure out what do we do with that?
What shift in the environment would make it more likely, given that all of the economic indicators you mentioned are already positive, and people are still having this reaction.
And we're coming 3 years off the pandemic, so the fatigue of I'm just trying to figure.
I think it's an excellent question. I'm not an economist. I have my opinions. I think the big drivers here are gas prices, because I think there are people at the margin who, unfortunately, they drive by a big red sign that has numbers going up, and not right now, but in September they will be up. And that's the leading economic indicator for them. They're also the same people that are looking at the cost of a gallon of milk and other groceries, and those haven't come down and probably won't be down in September or October either, because shipping is such a big cost. And if gas prices go up, as they always do over the summer, those things are going to become more expensive at the margin as well. And I think the one thing that is harder to gauge, but doing some research, I discovered that about 10% of the 2023 mortgages were adjustable rate. And that was probably based on, not just in Marin, that's in California as a whole, but it was probably based on the assumption that we were hearing all last year that Fed's going to lower interest rates, and that it was a good bet to do an adjustable rate mortgage. Now, most of those are 5/1s. There's some 7/1s. So they're not adjusting yet.
But that means they're going to hit in 2028.
Yeah. That's right. Right. And so hoping that the Fed actually does decrease mortgage rates or interest rates and mortgage rates following that, I think it might be one of the indicators that help us to find when, this economic malaise, if you will, is behind us. Because the other indicators are all good, right? It's just interest rates that are the one that is lagging or is out of whack for whatever reasons.
How much do you think the national election uncertainty, anxiety stuff, other kind of social indicators besides economic indicators, may or may not be playing into this in terms of messaging about, hey, we should all feel really bad about our community, whatever. I won't get into it too much, but how much of other social indicators do you think are playing into this and with the wait till after the election kind of deal?
Yeah, I think, I don't have a specific question that addresses that in any of my surveys, because our surveys are all for local governments and we try to avoid national politics. But I think that it is having a big impact. Mm-hmm. At the first level, I think that, people, right or wrongly, are not happy with their choices. And that means Democrats and Republicans are not happy with their choices. And the more educated, the more that's probably the case. And obviously your district is a more educated district. Secondly, we do have one campaign that's saying the world's coming to an end and the economy is the worst it's ever been. Even though none of that's true, that is their fundamental message. And I think that's getting through. So once we get beyond the presidential election, one way or the other, obviously Marin is going to be heavily in favor of Biden. But once we get beyond this election, we do eliminate that, that messaging goes away, I think. And there's more stability, and people can begin to plan. And then, of course, the Fed's interest rate decisions will have an impact on those adjustable rate mortgages, and people might start seeing daylight.
Okay.
Well, Marcy, you raise a good point. You know, this isn't, we have to roll up our sleeves and think around what this is and put our heads together with the new cabinet. And that's a very good point. I appreciate that. There's some positivity there. We need to keep that.
And I think too, you know, we had our budget advisory committee meetings, and I think everybody was hopeful. All the members of that committee were hopeful that the results of the parcel tax survey would be positive. And so this will be one of the topics that Chris and Dr. Graff will be covering with the budget advisory committee when they reconvene in the new school year. Because I do think that there, at least of the folks who were on that committee, did have high hopes that this would be one of the avenues that would be successful for us in order to move forward. So I do think convening with our community members, talking with them, helping them to understand, and we also know that right now we're just simply engaged with our parent community.
Right.
And so we have a much larger community than just our parent guardian community around who are the voters of our towns of Sabetzello and Fairfax. So we'll have definitely some work to do. And I say we still, because of course I love this school district, and I will always be here in heart and spirit and moving forward and helping from the sidelines and whatever I can do long after I'm gone.
Thank you.
All right. Well, do we have any further discussion? I guess not what I hoped to hear. We'll keep moving on. All right.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for all of your support and help with this survey, and also providing such a clear, comprehensive report of the findings.
Sure. Sorry, the numbers aren't what you were looking for, but it was great working with you.
Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Bye. All right, so moving on with our agenda. Our next item is Board of Trustees to express gratitude for individuals, communities, and others who contributed to the Ross Valley School District school community. So this is kind of unusual. We haven't done this before, but I wanted to say thank you to the people who've helped us and done above and beyond, I think, this school year. And I felt like the people who served on our budget advisory committee, from Chris to Marcy, to all of the staff who attended, the classified, the teachers, like everybody, and then all the parents, I'm just so grateful. And I wanted to say thank you, because we received so many emails upset about the financial situation, about teacher pay, and the people on our committee actually stepped up to help us do something about that and to learn about it. And so I just wanted to say thank you. And I know it's one of those things where we're just going to hear, and it's kind of like a little visual, but I do want to say that and acknowledge it. I particularly wanted to give a shout out to Nova Goff, who is a fifth grader going into sixth grade now, from Manor. She attended our, I think, 2 out of our 3 budget advisory committee meetings. I've met with her a couple times and talked to her and her mom. And she just really wants to help with education on the budget and finances. And so she's working on a project this summer, and we're going to try and get it up and running in the fall. It's like a video that's going to help kind of educate our community. It's designed for other students to understand, but I think it would be universally acceptable to send to everybody. And then in that same vein, James McKenna also reached out to me, and I've talked, and he's got a similar parent outreach informational kind of campaign he wants to do in the fall. And back to school night is what we're hoping for. But I just want to say thanks to both of them, because like I said, so many people are happy to yell about stuff, but they actually weren't yelling and they want to help. And I just was really grateful for that. Another parent I wanted to thank was Tori Canby. I know we mentioned it when we approved our land acknowledgement, but I went to the 4 out of the 5 promotion ceremonies for our schools this year, and hearing the land acknowledgement and how it was delivered a lot of times by students, it was really powerful. And I just wanted to say thank you for her for getting that acknowledgement taken care of and approved by the Miwok Council, and for the rest of the team that was part of that. I know Chris helped on that as well, and there were lots of people in our district and our team, Daniel. So I just want to say thank you for everyone who was involved in that. It was really special and powerful hearing it.
And then last but not least, I want to say thank you to Marcy. Katie Rice also said thank you, and I don't have a fancy resolution, but I do have something else that I wanted to pass along from the rest of us here in our Ross Valley District community. So I know it's a tradition for a lot of people in certain families to give a gift when someone graduates. This is kind of your graduation today. This is your last board meeting, but I don't know how to thank you for that. Here.
Thank you.
But we've all, you should look through it. It's been signed by people all across our district. The whole thing.
I will spend a lot of time looking. Wow, this is beautiful. All right, I will dig into this. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you, Ms. Lidwag.
Thank you.
For navigating in such a gracious and intentional and heartfelt way the amount of inquiry, feedback, communication that has come to the board on questions about funding, budget, and you have, without fail, responded in a way that I think just completely captures facts and heartfelt continuation of why we do this. So I just want to say thank you for that and for also navigating us through this period. You and Daniel, helping us onboard Dr. Graff, taking him around. I've heard wonderful stories about you guys just, really providing him with the concierge, the service that he's really gotten. And I just want to say thank you to both of you for that. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel. It's been fun working together on that project. So,
I'm going to miss you, Marcy.
Yeah, thank you. I will miss all of you. It has been fantastic working for you. You've been the best bosses that a superintendent could ever have. And I have been extremely blessed by the four of you here this evening, Ryan, who's not here this evening. And then there have been I was counting a total of 9 trustees who have been on the board since I became superintendent, and that is in the 4 years. And so the superintendent's job is difficult enough, but when you have a board of trustees who seeks to understand, who does their homework, who digs into the issues, who gets out and talks and listens to the community, it's the way that our school district functions really well, and how we have been able to do the great things we have on behalf of our students, staff, and families, and Fairfax and San Anselmo communities. And we are just very lucky. I'm very lucky to have had you all as a team to work with, and I can't thank you enough for everything that you have done and will continue to do.
Thank you. I'm going to miss you, but I appreciate the idea of you showing up in different places and that you continue to say, you're the places that you'll go, but one of them will continue to be here. And really appreciate also the transition that you've stewarded through of leaving on your own, deciding when it was right for you, and then helping us navigate that with a new superintendent and the staff that you have assembled, which is awesome, and that you have brought together and led, and it just, that whole teamwork that you have brought together is unparalleled. I can't imagine doing this in it, and any other, not that the other districts are bad, but I can't imagine. And it was one of the reasons why I decided to run, honestly, was when I knew that you were, here in this role, and it has never looked back. So thank you.
We have a thing in our family that when we go camping, you pick up 10 pieces of garbage as we leave, because you want to leave a place better than what you found it. And we try to live that in our family, and I live it as an individual, that wherever I've been, I try to leave the place better, whether it's making someone laugh, giving them a hug, or making some type of impact. And you are leaving this place better. And I really want to thank you for that. I am confident that if you try to hide, we will find you. We will find you.
I think that as I've been reflecting, because being sick the past 17 days hasn't been fun or helpful, and I did miss many of the promotions. But I keep why am I not sad? After 32 years, I'm excited. I think because the district is in overall a really good place, because we have worked collaboratively. There's nothing that I've done alone. Nobody can ever do anything alone, I don't think, in order to make the most success. And children, as you always have heard me say, they are my North Star. They are the reason that I never thought I'd get into education to be outside of the classroom. But as I have found my path in my career, is I've gone the furthest away from the classroom. And I told myself every step of the way that I would never forget the reason why I'm here. And it's always for children. They have been my North Star. They are the reasons I exist, the reasons I went into education, the reason I stayed in education. And getting back to being able to do what we have done, it is the collective we. It has been, thank you, Shelley, for pointing out, we have an amazing team. There is not one person in our school district who is not valued and valuable and integral to everything that we do. We don't have a position in this school district that doesn't matter, that doesn't exist for a very important reason. And we have amazing children in our school district, and they're looking to all of us adults to lead the way for them, to help ensure that their educational experience is the best that it can be, and that we're opening doors for the children every step of the way, that their path is something that is completely bright and wide open for them to determine who they are, what they want to do when they grow up, how they want to give back, how they want to continue to lead and give forward, pay it forward for everybody who, as they grow up. And we have an amazing staff, our classified, our certificated, our administrative. We have just an amazing staff, and we have an amazing community. I remember back to when we were living in Novato, and my husband was like, where do you want to live? I'm not feeling it. He grew up in Novato. And he was like, I'd like to move. And I said, well, he says, where do you want to go? And I said, I'd really love to move to San Anselmo or Fairfax. I'd been working at White Hill, and that's where I was. And he said, I love the town of San Anselmo. When I walked downtown, because our kids were in school here, and he was getting bagels or donuts or whatever with the kids, the people who were friendly and who would stop and talk, and just the way that he felt here. So we chose to make San Anselmo our home. And it's also been a place that I've been in my career for 32 or 36 years. And we have an amazing parent guardian community. We have parents who are engaged. They care about their children's education, whether they can be involved in it or not. And they're trusting all of us to ensure that their children are taken care of. And that's what we're here are, being stewards of our community and for our children. And I'm grateful and thankful that this is a place that I landed so long ago and have stayed. And I get to end my career here as well. And now I'm a community member.
Yeah, we have
to the end of
it.
June 30th. July 1.
We'll see you at public comments.
Oh, yeah. I'll be there. Be online.
All right. And with that, I'm going to move on to our next agenda item, which is staff presentation on local indicators.
All right, and we'll turn this over to Assistant Superintendent Julia Wolcott.
Yes, fabulous. Thank you. So the requirement is to present the local indicators at the same meeting that the is adopted. And so that's what we're doing this evening. And there's a document that you have probably had the chance to review that details all the different kind of self-surveys and analysis that lets us know that we have met the requirements for each of these local indicators. But there are 5 local indicators, and what you see here is kind of a truncated version of it. And on the side, it shows which of the LCAP goals, it connects with and where you can find it. So the first one is around basic conditions. Goal 1 is our academic goal. But that's where we're just making sure our schools are in good repair. There's a fit report. We always get, is it, Chris, a good rating or an excellent rating? I can't remember.
Right in that range. They go back and forth.
Okay. And then just student access to standards aligned materials, making sure that all of our teachers are credentialed, that sort of thing. And then the second priority is the implementation of state standards. We've talked a lot this year about the work that we've been doing around reading instruction and understanding the science of reading and identifying and implementing new assessments. So those are what we call local assessments that give us really very detailed information to help us understand where kids are and what we can do to support them. Priority 3 is parent and family engagement, and that goes right along with our goal 3, community engagement LCAP goal. As you know, we've been administering a student survey and a parent survey through Panorama Education, and then just all of those different groups of people that come together that help us to understand how we're doing as a district, whether that's our DLAC, which is our District English Language Advisory Committee, or ELAC is the site version of that, our Parent Guardian Equity Task Force, of course, all our site councils and parent clubs, and all that involvement from parents that really helps us understand how we're doing. And then school climate, really checking in with our students using that same survey system, and then monitoring, and this is, as you know, really critical for us, absenteeism and school suspension rates, but really our focus this year has been around absenteeism and looking at measures that we can take to increase attendance. We've done a lot of work with the county on that this year, and we are continuing that work with them, putting a plan in place with some really proactive measures to make sure we've got our kids in school. And then priority 7, the last priority there is access to a broad course of study. And that's just making sure that all students are getting all that they need, looking at our different programs and services. We have English language development teachers that support our multilingual learners. We have intervention support for students who need additional support with their academics, as well as counseling supports and behavioral supports. And that those tie back into goal 1, but also goal 2, actually. That is the presentation of the local indicators.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Do you have any questions for Julia? No? All right. There is no public here for public comment. So if you would like to have a discussion on this item, if not, I will entertain a motion.
There is no motion. It's just
it's just a session. Okay. All right. Skipping that one. Misread that. Thank you, Julia. All right. So the next item we have is recommended adoption of local control and accountability plan for 2024-25.
Yes. So on May 29th, we brought the 2024-25 LCAP to the board and spent a lot of time talking about the different goals and all of that. And then since that meeting, Chris and I met with some of the folks in the county to make sure that we've done everything correctly, and they had a few technical suggestions, and we made those changes, and now we are bringing the LCAP back to you for adoption. So this is an action item. We're very excited about this LCAP. It's really the driving force and strategic plan for district work, and it is the, result of so much input from students, from parents, from staff. Our team has really been working hard on it for a very long period of time. And all of that, I think, is helping to make sure that our goals are really in alignment with the work that we are doing in the district. And so we bring it to you this evening and recommend adoption of the LCAP.
Thank you. Anybody have questions for her?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted some bit of appreciation. Looked at lots of different LCAPs and whatever in my day job. And one of the things that I do appreciate in our approach and perspective and process with the LCAP is how connected it is to the daily experience in the classroom, in the schools, and that it's really does feel like it's a living, useful engagement tool. It's not a one and done, stick it in the folder and pull it out next year and look at it again. So I think that all has to do with the process of working and developing it. So,
and I think too, it is our district's strategic plan.
Yeah.
In addition to, we have our priorities that we do that aren't necessarily covered under the LCAP that we have in addition, but the LCAP is our strategic plan. So it is how we move forward in making a difference for kids and ensuring they get what they need.
It's been interesting doing these tours with Daniel and Dr. Graf, because we are seeing these things that are being in place when we go and look at these classrooms. So it's kind of fun for me to see it. Like, reading it is very different than actually seeing these kids experiencing it. We have no public comment. Do you have any other additional comments here? No? If not, I'll entertain a motion since we get to vote on this one. Yes.
I'll make a motion to recommend the adoption of the local control and accountability plan for 2024 and 2025.
I'll second.
Great. Daniel?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
Rachel? Aye. All right. We have adopted it. Thank you. Thank you, Julia. Our next item is the recommended adoption of Resolution 1923-24 Education Protection Account EPA spending plan for the 2024-25 school year.
All right, and Chris Carson, our Chief Business Official, will present this.
Yes, this is a perfunctory resolution that we have to pass every year. Back in 2012, there was a fiscal crisis at the state level, and the state was going to take dollars away from education. And what they devised was this Proposition 30 that they sold as providing additional dollars to education. And it did pass. And what they basically did is they took the dollars from us and gave it back to us. And we have to say how we're going to spend those dollars. So it's a zero-sum game for us. It's part of our LCFF revenues. And the dollars that we are that we're projecting to receive for next year, approximately $332,000. And we are going to use them for teacher salaries. And so that's really what this whole resolution is about. How we're going to spend the dollars that the state took away and gave back to us.
So Chris, is this one of those things where I heard that the CD was going to go look through all the paperwork that we have to file as a school district and see if they could consolidate some of these things so we're not wasting time preparing these forms? Is this one of those things that might fall under that? Or not?
Ask for a friend.
I'm just curious.
I read that same article, and what I didn't see are the examples.
Yeah.
Where are they going to be looking? So I was curious.
Either, but this seems like one of those things that might potentially fall under that umbrella to me.
It could really do that.
I think the requirement under the proposition, though, says that we will provide information. Okay. So if I had to guess, this is not one of them.
Okay.
But
because it's a proposition based
yes.
Okay.
Requirement. Procedure as opposed to an administrative procedure.
Yes.
Okay. Requested by them.
That would be my guess.
So this isn't new money.
No, this is not new
This is like, how are we spending it? And we're sending them another report.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, we really don't even do that. We just have to show our auditor every year that we've done this process, how we're using it, and they look to make sure that we're not using it for unintended purposes. You can't use it for administrator costs, for example.
It's important.
Yeah.
Great.
This is an adoption.
Yeah, we have to adopt this. So anybody else have comments on this? No? All right. Now entertaining motion then. Do we have any more questions or comments? And no public comment, so there's no public here.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 19-23-24 Education Protection Account Spending Plan for the 2024-2025 school year.
Motion second.
I will second.
Great. Motion and second. Shelley. Aye. Chris.
Aye.
Daniel.
Aye.
Rachel. Aye. Thank you, Chris.
Next item is our recommended adoption of the 24-25 district budget and multi-year projections. So Chris Carson.
This is our same presentation. There's really not much additional to say other than I just wanted to share, again, we do have declining enrollment. I promise to make this really fast. We do have declining enrollment. We do have the issue where our P2 average daily attendance, which is what we're funded on, which is a measured date in April of our attendance, versus what we're actually paid on, has been slowly declining to get closer together, which the reason you saw the large discrepancy between funded ADA and P2 ADA was because the state was giving us additional dollars as a result of COVID. And we then ended up in 22-23 having a 3-year smoothing on that, 3-year look back for our average attendance. So that's the reason you see that. When looking at our COLAs versus our LCFF revenues, because oftentimes people say you're getting 13.26% in 22-23, why can't you give more? What we actually received in revenues between our LCFF revenues and our parcel tax revenues, which we pay teacher salaries out of. When looking at it, we really only had a 7.62% COLA instead of 13.26. In the current year, 23-24, instead of 8.22, we had 2.47, and you can kind of see those differences as you move forward. And what we expect in 25-26 at this particular juncture, based upon the information we have, is instead of having a COLA of 2.93%, we would have a negative COLA. So what that means is that we would have our revenues would be less in 25-26. So we have hit the fiscal cliff that we talked about. This is just some of the basic information in terms of the assumptions. Our general fund revenues, again, LCFF is the single largest source, parcel tax number 2. When looking at those two amounts are over 80% of your total revenues in your general fund. So those are very important sources for the district. And key in on that 15.9% for parcel tax. That is really due to the generosity of our taxpayers in the community. And then this just looks at our multi-year projections in terms of our revenues. And you can see the drop in our estimated revenues in 25-26. When looking at our expenses, our single largest source of expenses are salaries and benefits, which is exactly what you would expect. We're a people business. And then our expenses, and then as we go forward, our multi-year projections in terms of our reserves. And one thing I do want to point out is that we have assigned for the community funding, at least at this moment, the additional revenues that we're anticipating receiving, which you can see that at the bottom. It's the second one from the bottom. In 24-25, you see $524,203. That's the additional revenues that we are anticipating receiving above the local control funding formula calculator based upon our attendance only. And so we're expecting, because we're going to be community funded next year, to receive an additional $524,000. At this particular point, we're reserving those dollars just because I know that another district in the county flipped back out of community funded status at the last minute.
In the middle of the school year. During the school year.
In May for the current school year. Mm-hmm. So it could happen. It's really dependent upon your property taxes that you receive.
So again, you're saying that next year, the 24-25 school year, we will be in the community funded.
Correct.
zone.
And then 25-26, we will flip back out, be state aid funded, which is why you see the drop in revenues. And then we go back in 26-27. And the additional funding, you carry over that $524,000 because if you can only spend it once, but you show it in your balances. And then that third year looks like our fourth year there, 26, 27, 1.5 million. It's a combination of the 524,000 plus an additional a little over $1 million in revenue, community funded. So you can see we're starting to go deeper and deeper and deeper into community funded status based upon our current estimates.
So we're losing about $1.7 million a year this year, next year, and 25, 26 a year in revenue. Right, 1.7 this year, 1.5, 1.4 next year.
2 million.
2 million in 25, 26.
That's the structural.
That's a structural deficit.
Yeah, that's that's the challenge.
Those are our challenges right now.
So for the 25-26, that includes the in lieu property taxes we have to pay to a charter or whatever?
In 25, 26, we have to actually pay it, but we'll receive additional funds in state aid to make up for it. So for us, it'll be a cash flow issue. For our revenues, it'll be a zero-sum game.
I'm not bright enough to reconcile this, but the June 22nd governor's budget, did that have any positive or negative impact on these numbers?
What it did is it didn't deepen the issues at the state level and for districts. The one thing that did come out of it is they are going to start imposing deferrals. And what I've seen is the deferral at this particular point that I can see is moving our June state aid apportionment into our July payment. So it's only moving it a month, which just becomes a cash flow issue. But keep in mind, because we're going to be community funded next year, our state aid is going to be really small.
Okay.
We still get state aid. It's kind of a misnomer. You are always, even deep community funded districts get a small amount of state aid, but it's going to be enough that it's not going to matter to us. It's simply a cash flow issue.
And this is showing that in 26-27, we are 0.14% over our minimum required reserve.
And that's because of those assignments. Because when you pull out those assignments, it actually reduces that percentage as well. So as you see,
your expenses,
the assignment. So you see assigned community funding.
Yeah.
As you pull those out, those funds, it reduces the amount of your ending fund balance.
Not below the 3.14.
Correct.
The 3.14 is what you're left.
Correct. Okay. And if I didn't do the assignment, our reserves would actually be greater. But they're still not that large.
Okay. But it's
because 3% is going to be calculated. Our minimum reserve is 3%, and it's calculated based upon your expenses. So on $30 million, 3% is.
Well, we are approving a budget in which 2 of the years, I'm just highlighting for my colleagues here, that we are approving a budget in which 2 of the 3 years that we are approving are below our board policy. One of those substantially.
Yeah, and just right above the state's required.
And just right above the state's required.
And it may have been a meeting that you missed, but we did talk about potentially taking a look at our board policy. And so that is something that your governance team, you will do in the new school year to take a look at the district's designated reserve amount.
And so I do want to point out that based upon a $30 million expense, your reserve requirement for 3% is $900,000. So if we were to add back that 1.5 million, that's more than 4%. So you would be somewhere in the 7.5% to 8% range in that fourth year, 26-27. If I didn't do that assignment.
Does that assignment show up in the budget we submit to MCOE?
It does as an assignment, just so that we can see it and point it out to the County Office of Education. So,
and just to clarify, you assign it for what purpose? What reason? Why do you do that?
Only at this particular juncture until we know that we're going to get the dollars. And once we get them, then they're available for any purpose, which is why I pointed out that even though it's $1.5 million less than our ending fund balance, it would be roughly 4% more, 4.5% more.
And that is you're holding it aside to just wait to confirm that we're actually community funded.
Just to be
because
safe.
you don't want to think you're going to be community funded, spend all of that money, and then oops, end up not being community funded.
At that particular point, it no longer becomes a budget issue. It becomes a dire budget issue.
Okay, that's just, yeah. Okay. That's just an example, it seems, of the complicated nature of what happens in the complications when you flip-flop back and forth is you get the added uncertainty,
yes.
You get the added complications of doing bookkeeping one way in one status and then having to do bookkeeping in another status. And so,
and the one thing school services will tell us is that the most difficult position you can be as a governing board and a school district is being in a position of flipping in and out.
Great. Okay.
So, in a nutshell, that's our budget.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying on top of all of that myriad of complications of being one of those school districts who is in the most complicated position that you can be in with difficult budget.
Very grateful to have you as our CBO.
Any other questions?
Nobody else have questions, comments? All right, no public comment for public hearing comments, and then there's no discussion. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll recommend we adopt the 2024-2025 district budget and multi-year projections for 2025-2026 and 2026-2027.
A motion, do I have a second?
A second.
All right, motion is second. Daniel?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Shelley?
Yeah, I don't like it, but what we got.
It's not pretty.
No, it's right. It's not great. Rachel, aye. Okay, so we have approved that. Thank you guys. Next item is recommended adoption of Resolution 1723-24, authorization to sign on behalf of the governing board.
This is Chris Carson.
This is a new one for us, only in that it puts Tyler Graff as our superintendent. So we have one every year, and there's actually multiple. There's 3 of us that are authorized to sign on behalf of the district. Julia Molcott, myself, and the superintendent. And so all we're doing is making sure that Tyler has that ability when he comes in July.
Sounds like a reasonable thing to do.
I'm making him official.
He's already official.
That's
This is
true,
just official with the county office of it. And this is something we have to do every year.
I'll make, no discussion.
No discussion,
public comment.
questions.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 1723-24, authorization to sign on behalf of the governing board.
I'll second it.
All right, great.
Shelley? Aye.
Dana?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Rachel, aye. Okay. And recommended approval of declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 2024-25 school year. So our next agenda item.
Alrighty, and I did previously bring this to you in the May 1st board meeting. I had not submitted it to the CTC, the required documents that need to go there. And so as the school year progressed in the spring and we realized we had a few other open teaching positions, we realized that we needed to update and revise this declaration of need to add some other positions that we may have difficulty fulfilling. And what the declaration of need does is a reminder, it's a perfunctory exercise that we do every year. What it does is once we have this declaration filed with the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, that if we end up hiring teachers who are not yet fully credentialed, it allows then us to apply for any type of emergency or waiver or that kind of thing while that teacher goes through a credential program to become fully credentialed. And this process is the same. So as an example, California has a more stringent requirement than a lot of other states related to English learner authorization. And so we could have a teacher who's fully credentialed, even in the state of California when they come from out of state, but they need time to get their English learner authorization. So this allows for any type of a permit that we have to have a teacher on who isn't yet fully recognized in the state of California with the credentials. So bringing this back to you, it's an initial again, since I hadn't submitted the paperwork to the CTC. So asking you this evening to approve the declaration of need for the fully qualified educators for the 24-25 school year.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from our table? And no public or comment, so if we have no discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Yeah, so I recommend the Board of Trustees approve the declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 2024-2025 school year.
Yeah, second that.
Great, thank you. Daniel?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
Rachel? Aye. Thank you, Mercy. Our next agenda item is recommended adoption of resolutions 11-23-24 and 12-23-24, certificated local assignment authorizations.
Thank you. And what Education Code does allow is that you can have some local assignment options. So if you have a teacher who is fully credentialed, but they are going to be placed in an assignment that may not be within their credential area, there's Education Code, local assignment options to allow us to place those teachers. So historically in Ross Valley, we've utilized the local assignment option because of our block schedule at White Hill, and is required by the state of California for a multiple subjects teacher. They must see each of their groups of students each school day. And because of our block schedule, meaning that not all of the periods run on each of the 5 school days per week, they don't see each of their groups of students. So one of the local assignment options that we utilize is the units version. And what that means is if the teacher has a specific required number of units in each of the content areas where they're going to teach, 6 upper division, 12 lower division, then they can be on a local assignment option and they're considered appropriately credentialed by the state of California. And then the other assignment option we use is what's called the Craven. It's related to the legislator who passed the bill. And what that does is the teacher may not have the units, but we go through a process, and we call it in Ross Valley the assignment review panel. And the assignment review panel reviews through, it could be through observation, interview, reviewing a portfolio that the teachers put together to determine that they do have subject matter competency in each of the areas. So in our 6th grade, of the core teachers there, we have Sarah Ferner, who will be joining us next school year, coming to us from the Mill Valley School District, but is San Anselmo resident. Georgia Hamilton, who's been with us for many years, as Aaron Hess, Mel Hickman, and Ben Tunney. So they are the 5 of our 6th grade core teachers who will be on local assignment options. And then when we had a vacancy in math for the 24-25 school year, Brianna Hatfield, who has been teaching in 6th grade core math and science, she has expressed an interest in moving into single subject area. And she is working on her credential to get single subject math. So while she is working on completing her CTC requirements to get a single subject credential in mathematics, we have her on a local assignment option. She is a teacher who does have the requisite number of units in the core content that she teaches. And if I can back up, Sarah Ferner has a credential, and it's on the, I listed on the resolution, but she has a credential in one of the content areas. But do you know, Julia?
Science.
She has a science credential. So we've utilized the Craven for her math access, that she had been teaching math in the Mill Valley School District as well. And so we do have a total then of 6 total teachers at White Hill who we have on local assignment options for the 24-25 school year. So this isn't something that goes to the state level. It's not part of the declaration of need. They don't need permits to do this. These are what's through Education Code designated as local assignment options, and we are authorized to be able to meet these requirements for this. So you have any questions?
I have a quick question. Given we have a block schedule every year, and given that I recognize having approved these, there's no evergreen approval that says once we approve a teacher to be doing this in a block schedule, it's like every year we're just approving the same people.
Yes, it's an annual requirement.
And might be one of your.
And what we also need to have annually is the teachers have, each of the teachers on a local assignment option have to sign an agreement that they agree to teach in or on a local assignment option. They consent to teach in their assignment. We've talked over the years, so as an example, in 6th grade, of moving to single subject requirements. So like we have other 6th grade teachers who happen to have single subject credentials in each of the content areas they teach. And we've looked at doing that and just, supporting our folks with multiple subject credentials and going to get the single subject requirements. However, as we are going into a situation of a teacher shortage and also valuing our teachers and needing to make sure that we're supporting, at least for the time being, this may shift in the future, but we believe so strongly that the block schedule is good for children that short of requiring teachers who then, if they can't meet the requirements, they can't teach in Ross Valley. And so it's just very important to us that we maintain this as an option.
It's just the bureaucracy having to do the same thing.
Maybe this will be one of those things on the list of having to report annually.
All right. No public comment. Further discussion on this? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll adopt the resolution 11-23-24 and 12-23-24 to authorize 5 6th grade core teachers and 1 7th grade math teacher at White Hill to teach courses outside their credential authorization in accordance with the provisions California Education Code local assignment authorizations.
I will second that.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. Daniel.
Yeah, aye.
Chris.
Yes.
Shelley.
Aye.
Rachel. Aye. All right. Our next item is recommended approval of compensation and health and welfare adjustments for the 2023-24 school year for the unrepresented classified and confidential staff.
Alrighty, and so for this item, we do have in our services, they're unrepresented. All these agenda items on tonight's agenda are unrepresented employees in the school district, meaning they're not part of the union and they don't have a union. And so this is our classified confidential staff. And one of the complicated parts about how you're going to see these agenda items structured, so I'll explain it now so that I hope it'll help as we go through, is when Chris does the 80-1200, it puts all of the unrepresented employees into the category. So we struggled a lot with how do we break out what the total percentage of so like for the classified confidentials, we're going to be increasing their salary schedules by 2.49%. And they, as the teachers did, that matches what the teachers received on salary. So all of the related salary increases that they received. So the teachers received $2,000 to each cell on the salary schedule. And we created a salary schedule for our speech and language pathologists, and then we had some additional increases for some salary-related stipend type or payment types of things. So that equated for the teachers is to 2.49%. The classified confidential employees are going to be receiving a total increase to their salary schedules of 2.49%. There's not a separate salary schedule that we're creating or so on. So this is the same equivalent as what the teachers receive. So the percentage that the classified confidentials will be receiving is 2.49%. The off-schedule bonus for $500 for our classified confidentials equates to a 0.26% increase to those unrepresented employee group. And then to cover the rate increase of the employee-only Kaiser and Delta insurance. That is because all employees must participate in that or included in it. It's a total percentage of 0.83. So where we struggle and where it may be difficult to look at is, well, wait a minute, if our total compensation package for the teachers was 3.85%, and you'll see here, I don't have it, remember exactly which ones we looked at, but I don't know, Chris, does this one equal 3.85%?
No, it doesn't.
No. Is that on there? Is it on here? So that's where we struggled, because when Chris tried to break out from the AB 1200, it was extremely complicated to pull out for each person. And when he was looking at doing the math, 3.58. So our teacher's total compensation package is 3.85. For the confidential classified, it's 3.58. All right, so that's what it is by giving this increase to our classified confidentials. So it is different than when we're looking at if the teachers have received a total compensation package that was just percentage rates applied to the salary schedule. It's easier to apply. But because they did it and had to then break out into what that percentage was, it makes it more complicated to try to do a comparison between your what is being received by an employee group, if that makes sense. Just because historically, I see Chris, your head spinning, is historically what we've looked at is in the district the same percentage increases for all employee groups. And so just that this is showing that it isn't the same exact percentage increase. Okay. For whatever that's worth. Okay.
One of the things that's driving that, though, is the off schedule. Because the off schedule changes based upon your salary. As long as you're not giving it as a percentage, because in this particular situation, we're giving it as a dollar amount based upon whatever your salaries are, it just changes that percentage. So that's really what drives all of that.
So just in case there were any questions around it. But what we're looking at here is after meeting and conferring with our confidential classified employees, we're looking at approving a 2.49% increase to the salary schedule, a $500 bonus off schedule, and the increased rate for employee-only Kaiser and Delta Dental to cover those costs for the 23-24 school year.
So my question is like these groups, they were happy with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
If I could just give you an example so it makes sense what I just explained. $500 on a $50,000 salary is a bigger percentage than $500 on
$100,000.
So
I was just going to ask about the impact of the $500 bonus. Is it?
That's what ends up
So
causing.
it is felt.
And when we did this calculation, that 0.26 is based upon also all non-represented.
Okay.
Any questions about the supplement, if we call it that, for our unrepresented classified confidentials?
No questions. There's no public comment. Does anyone else have questions? Or no public comment? Any discussion? All right, I will entertain the motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend the approval of compensation and health and welfare adjustments for the 2023-24 school year for unrepresented classified confidential staff. 3.58%.
All right. Motion and a second. Chris?
Aye.
Shelley? Aye. Daniel?
Aye.
Rachel? Aye. I feel like we just got getting under the wire in the school year.
Yes. And they won't see it until the new school year. So the next item on the agenda is for the recommended approval of compensation and health and welfare adjustments for the 23-24 school year for our unrepresented certificated and classified management employees. So for those, in accordance with the table here, is that group will be taking $2,000 applied to each cell on the salary schedule, so similar to what the teachers receive. You can see what the percentage cost for them is related to that is 1.16. And then the off-schedule bonus, which is, Chris said, the amount for the off-schedule, that percentage is for all of the unrepresented groups. Again, it's hard to break that out. But 0.26, and then again to cover the increase to the employee-only Kaiser dental rates.
Any questions on this one?
This one's more straightforward.
Yeah.
It didn't help all that convoluted explanation.
Yeah. No questions, no public comment for now, and any discussion? All right, if not, I will entertain a motion.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve of compensation, health, and welfare adjustments for the 2023-24 school year for unrepresented certified certificated management and classified management staff.
First, second.
I'll second it.
Great. Chris?
Aye.
Daniel?
Aye.
Shelley? Aye. Rachel? Aye.
Thank you. And the next item is related to the recommended approval of compensation, health, and welfare adjustments for our chief business official, Chris Carson. So again, being a member of the classified management, but because he is on a contract, we bring it forth separately than the group of the classified and certificated management. And so for Chris also to receive the $2,000 applied to the cells on the classified management salary schedule, and that equates to a 1.16 increase. The off-schedule bonus was offered, but Chris has chosen to forego the off-schedule bonus, and then to cover the increase to Kaiser and Delta Dental insurance, and that again is that 0.83%.
Question?
When I first saw it, I said, my first thought was no, like you are forgoing the bonus. I understand what you're doing there. I just wanted to call it out. That's all.
I sat through budget advisory committee meetings, and I've heard a lot of comments and emails that right. But
yeah.
this is a very meaningful gesture.
Yes, it
very
is.
appreciated. No public comment. Or any other further discussion? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I recommend we approve the chief business official's compensation and health and welfare adjustments for the 23-24 school year.
Yeah, second.
Okay, Daniel?
Aye.
Chris? Aye. Shelley? Aye. Rachel? Aye.
And then as always, as I say every time we have this, it's very awkward to be presenting on your own. But again, just like with Chris and the certificated management as part of the group that I'm with, is an increase of $2,000 to the annual salary. I too have chosen to forego the off-schedule bonus and then to cover the increased rate to Kaiser and Delta Dental.
Same reaction to this one, especially if you leaving us and after you've done this was a very big gesture. No public comment? Any further discussion? Anyone would like to make a motion?
I'll recommend the approval of the compensation, health, and welfare adjustment for the 2023-24 school year for the superintendent.
Second. All right, Chris. Shelley?
Aye.
Rachel, aye. All right, next item is recommended adoption of Board Bylaw Exhibit 9270, Conflict of Interest Resolution, number 2023, 24, and Appendix.
Alrighty, and so with this one, the State Political Reform Act requires all public agencies to adopt a conflict of interest code, and that code designates positions that are required to file the Statements of Economic Interest, aka Form 700, and assigns the disclosure categories specifying the types of interest to be reported. Every local government agency is required to review its conflict of interest code every 2 years. We are up for doing this. It is due by October 1.
the district last updated our board bylaw on May 3, 2023. And what we did not do at that time was to approve an exhibit, which is the exhibit here that we're having before you tonight, that lists the positions and each of the designated requirements for them. And so thinking about trying to do as much as I can for Tyler before he begins and take as much off his plate so he can start in the district and get to know our district, we thought, let's bring this forward to you this evening and let's get this one more thing done. So what will happen after tonight's meeting is, with approval of this, is then we will submit the required information to our county supervisors. It does not go to the state level. The county of Marin is responsible for then providing all the information, maintaining it, and then providing it as requested to the state level.
Question. Sorry. Nobody's here.
Yeah, nobody's here to make comments or public comment. Go ahead if you want to make a motion.
I make a motion to adopt board bylaw exhibit 9270 conflict of interest resolution 20-23-24 and appendix.
I will second that. Shelley?
Yes, aye.
Rachel, aye. Chris?
Aye.
Daniel?
Aye.
All right, next item is E, consent actions. Unless there is anything in this particular listing under E that somebody would like to pull out, I will entertain a motion. There's no public comment. There's no public hearing.
These are all pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Just one quick question. The lease for the Y is every single year, right? I remember doing this last year, right? Okay.
Yeah. What if I can just say along those lines is Chris is working with them to again operate the ELOP, Extended Learning Opportunity Program, but that isn't part of the lease. That's a whole separate agreement that we'll be bringing forth to you in the fall.
Okay, great.
We don't have any questions. These are all standard annual.
Yeah.
I will entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to adopt all consent action items listed on the agenda for June 26, 2024.
Second. Okay. Chris?
Aye.
Shelley, aye. Daniel?
Aye.
Rachel, aye. And moving along, board business, so committee updates and reports and announcements by trustees. Anybody want to share anything?
Awesome graduations all around.
Yeah. Right?
I liked how different the elementary schools were. I went to Wade Thomas first, then Brookside, and Hidden Valley last. I didn't get to Manor. Sorry, Peg. But I loved Hidden Valleys, how the students sat with their families. That had the most impact to me. The students each sat with their parents or guardians, and then they still got called up on stage as a 5th grade class, and they went through the same type of, promotion handshake. But it was nice that the students were with their families and guardians the whole time, and then they got celebrated. That was a really nice impact to me.
You went to White House too, right?
Yeah, I went to White House. Yeah. That was great because it was also the shortest.
Sure.
It was fantastic, but it was great. It was. They were all excellent. To Chris's point, they were all excellent.
The young lady who gave her speech at White Hill, I came home and I said, "Kids, you got to hear."
What's the video that she watched?
This young lady, what she said.
What was it? She watched a video 4 months ago that changed her life about stopping
Just living in the moment.
Living in the moment.
Yeah.
So we need to find out what that video is and.
Yeah. Good on her.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so I made it to 4 out of the 5 promotions. I missed Brookside, which I think was represented as well by trustees. But I did do the Stinson Beach 7th grade field trip. So I got that experience instead.
Yes.
And a sunburn. But that was a lot of fun. I had no idea how much effort goes into taking an entire 6th grade or 7th grade class to the beach.
Yes.
Holy moly. Great deal of respect for those teachers.
We've been doing that since 2nd grade. This Brookside class has gone every year.
Daniel and I also did walkthroughs of White Hill and Hidden Valley I did them with White Hill and Hidden Valley with Tyler, Dr. Graff. And then I think Daniel went to the other schools. And then let's see what else I did. I wanted to say thank you to the music teachers because they performed it 4 out of the 5 promotions. And then a shout out to the White Hill kids. The bands there played live, which is the first time since before COVID. It was so cool. And then I attended the Yes Board mini retreat, which is kind of like a regrouping for the beginning of the school year.
A shout out to Chris and his crew getting everyone parked and in and out.
Chris is still sunburned.
I stayed back. I was like, I'll put away some chairs, and I was just like, it was like a sea of chairs. I was like, okay, I've got 3. They worked so hard. So amazing.
I did the site walks at all of the sites as well earlier. I forget when exactly it was, but that's definitely, I think, something to continue doing regularly. It's just super helpful, and maybe with different, we did one with respect to looking at the facilities when we did some of those walkthroughs with the facilities, and then we did one kind of general one, but even thematic, where you don't have to see everything, but maybe even next year some thematic site visits to really specifically focus on reading one time and then maybe math later in the year or something like that might be, because those are really, I think, helpful and good relationship and connection, and just kind of be on site that's not in a awkward, disruptive way where you just kind of show up.
And I think the site staff, they love having you all visit and being in the classrooms, so they really love that.
Great.
Too. Yeah.
What I love most about those visits too is there is a definite vibe, a different energy at each campus, and it's very distinct. Yet the interconnectivity of it being under the RVSD umbrella was also so obvious. It was like having 5 kids that around the dinner table, and they're all yours, but you're just they're different.
Yeah.
But they're all great.
Yeah.
It was really good to see that.
I'm glad we got to.
Yeah. True.
It's one of the things that took us a while from COVID to get back to doing. But I agree with you. It should continue.
Yeah.
It's great. And it is nice to see just what you said, that kind of threaded cohesion of it does feel like it's all within a family.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I've seen evolve more and more over the years from a long time ago when my kids were in the district, where it definitely felt much more separate. The schools felt more separate, I think, and I've seen it feel more, but still retaining that, individual vibe on each campus, but definitely feeling that sense of cohesion more. So, and I think that is a testament and has been intentional. So I appreciate that intentionality of striking that balance between not being so uniform that everybody feels shoehorned into boxes, but also not being so rogue that everybody's out there doing their own thing and there's no sense of community across all of the schools. So really nice balance being struck, I think. Thanks.
Moving on, we have the approval of regular meeting minutes from May 29th, 2024. I think that was one that was not up. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I wasn't there. So.
No public comment.
No.
Any discussion? No. All right.
I read them to capture everything. Thank you, Teresa.
Yes, thank you. I will make a motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes for May 29th, 2024.
I'll second that.
Great. Rachel, aye. Chris?
Aye.
And Daniel?
Aye.
Great.
And I abstain.
Keith. All right, now we have superintendent cabinet reports.
Right, Julia, anything and services?
Yeah, lots. Finishing up the year, also enjoyed attending all 5 promotions. Really terrific events, and always just so cheerful and happy. So that was wonderful to see. lots of work in curriculum ordering. It's one of the big things that we do at the end of each year to get ready for the following year. And Lynn Marion is just amazing. She's the assistant at the DO that does most of the work related to that. And it's a lot this year because we're preparing for 3 different pilots or adoptions. So the Bridges math curriculum at the elementary level, we're moving from Bridges 2nd edition to Bridges 3rd edition, preparing for some professional development and updating materials. And then we're piloting Desmos, Amplify Desmos math program at the middle school. And then we are going to be piloting Benchmark Advance for our K-5 English language arts adoption process. So that's all a lot of coordination, but it's really exciting. And lots happening in the world of hiring. We are slowly making our way. It's like one of my favorite things to do is to pull down an opening from EdJoin to make it a little bit of a smaller list. And we are finding success. We found someone today for one of our positions, open positions. And so we're getting there. And then just some kind of news for me that was really good from the state is that we will not next year be required to give the LPAC exam to our TK kids. And our teachers who were administering that had been feeling like it was really far too young to give that assessment to a 4-year-old, and understanding that 4-year-olds are in the process of language acquisition. And so we get to delay that to kindergarten. So it's nice when we get things right. And that is it from me.
I do want to shout out as a parent, being able to assess the CAST scores was very easy and comprehensive, and thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yes, we sent those out, or sent the email with how to access.
And it was
much earlier than last year, so I was really happy about that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julia, for everything that you have done this year and for all your prior years. And look forward to just continuing to watch and support. I'll be doing a lot of things.
Good question on the TK and K, given the LPAC. What kind of readiness assessments do those TKK teachers like to use to be, especially now that we're going into the TK area too, that are age and developmentally focused, not, like you said, academic language acquisition focused. I know there's like ASQ, Ages and Stages questionnaire, there's the KSEP, what are the ones that the teachers are, or
they haven't necessarily landed on kind of a formal assessment that they're using with TK. They've actually spent a lot of time working on report cards and then creating, I guess we would call them local assessments, but smaller assessments for all kinds of things, like the ability to draw a person.
Right.
And what that looks like from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and a lot around executive functioning. We're super excited to be rolling out another pilot of a TK curriculum called Creative Curriculum, I think it's called. That's a play-based curriculum in alignment with the CBE's TK standards. So that's a part of that too. And then at the kindergarten level, they use an assessment platform called ESGI, and into that platform is something called the BPST, which is really the regression of phonics. So those are small assessments that they give orally one-to-one with the students. Around some of them is just letter recognition, letter sounds, that kind of thing. They have some math assessments in there too. In kindergarten, you're looking at one-to-one correspondence and, cardinality, that kind of thing. And then iReady, though, does have a kindergarten assessment. And we piloted it this year, and the teachers felt good about it. We're having a conversation about how to be really clear about when we are, because it is an assessment that students take on an iPad.
Yeah.
And so being really clear about how much time students will be on an iPad and what that looks like, and how we make sure that we're,
especially for the younger ones, where the manipulatives and the, is so important with the motor skills and things like that as well.
Exactly.
Okay. That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Chris Carson, the world of maintenance and operations.
Well, first, my staff has been really busy working on getting the certificated retro payroll done. And we're just waiting back to hear back from the County Office of Education. They always do a review. They send it off to CalSTRS as well. And CalSTRS gives us any changes we need to do. And so we expect that to go out and under the schedule that we have planned and talked about publicly, that it'll go in July. So staff should get that. It's also a really busy time of the year for not only the staff here in our department, where we're closing the books, getting everything ready for finishing up last year, but also starting the new year with all of our budgets. But all of our work is being done out at the school sites. And if you go out to our schools right now, you might find a school that doesn't have very many custodial staff, if any, but you go to another and it's inundated with staff. Mm-hmm. We're shifting around in teams. They're working as a team at each of the campuses that they're at. And they're really doing a remarkable job in ensuring that those sites are prepared for that first day when the kids come back. And so that's really what it's all about. And that's something that we really enjoy looking at the facilities and looking at all the hard work that our staff is doing. So.
We went to Brookside and because I have nothing else to do with my life, right? And inside the multipurpose room, every colorful carpet that the kids sit down were all lined. It was like the quilt project. And they were going to be cleaning all of them. And Mr. Toto was there. He had like a staff of 4 people. And it was so clean and so nice. And we were like, do the kids need to stay away longer? You could really, it was so wonderful. Anyway, they were working so hard. And it's a testament to just the commitment that staff has. It was just great to see.
And I do want to say thank you and good luck in your promotion.
Thank you. Whatever I do with my life after graduation. All right, and I spoke earlier this evening, so I don't have anything else to add other than I just so enjoyed being here, and I'm so thankful for everything. And I want to also just give a shout out to Teresa, because the getting set up for board meetings is pretty much can become an all-day task of if we get more communications with the board, and it's, getting the room set up and then working with Sean. Thank you so very much, Sean. Our friend Jorge, unfortunately, is out on medical leave. So thank you, Sean, for being available these last few months and being present with us at these board meetings and helping to ensure our sound is going forward. So one of Teresa's jobs is the care and feeding of the board, and she does that very well. So thank you, Teresa. Thank you. And thank you, Sean, for everything that you do. I love you all.
Oh, me too, girl.
Here we go. Yeah. All right. Future.
Call this to an end.
You have you're gonna call it to.
So future board topics and board direction. So we kind of, given our recent Godby report, I don't know that we're putting like a parcel tax on our next agenda. That's not going to go on there.
But it will be a future topic.
It will be a future topic. It just might be a little bit further distant future than we had expected, I think.
And our next meeting is July
17th.
July 17th. And as it's looking right now, you will need to have a meeting on that evening. So if you can all please just keep it set aside. As long as we have 3 trustees present, one of the items that we know we need to have on the agenda right now is we have hired a teacher who is in a credential program. And so we need to enter into an agreement with her program, Cal State Teach. So that will be on the agenda, and we can't apply, or the Cal State Teach can't apply for the intern credential until we have the agreement in place. So that's a consent item. We could, of course, move it to presentation, but your agenda might be consent only. But it will be very important.
That'd be easy one for us.
Right? And unfortunately, Teresa gets to drive how many hours did you say? 9 hours? But I'm happy to volunteer
in your place.
There you go.
So you can stay up at the lake. I'm happy to do it.
That's a lot of driving.
I know. I'm happy
We'll have to. We'll figure it out.
Okay, yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, that seems excessive to me. Okay.
So maybe not, Teresa. You won't have to try.
All right.
Good thing I brought it up.
Future boat topics. There was something that I saw from the San Anselmo, the town, about a parade that they're doing around one of their dine donates, and so I didn't know if we were interested as a district or maybe informing our PTOs or something like about having an entry in the parade
over the summer.
It's in September.
Oh, it's September 14th.
Yeah, so there's that, and I mean, I don't know. We did a Fairfax Festival parade last year where everybody was wearing.
And we've done the San Anselmo one before.
Yeah, that's right. I did it.
Back when it was country
fair day. Or whatever.
Fair day. There was a parade, so we've been in that a number of times.
Very good outreach. To parent teacher
Parent clubs.
Yeah, we might
have them dress up in the mascots.
Yeah.
We do need more.
It's in the evening, so maybe not as much.
Oh, it's an evening parade this time?
It's an evening parade. So I think they're planning it to be like, you have to be there at 4 for entries and parades at 6 or something.
And we're in the process of getting our parade banner updated because our schools, some of them have changed logos. So we're getting those the banners updated. And then what we are out of is any kind of district swag, if you will. So we're out of pencils, we're out of stickers and things like that. So we have historically passed those out to the kids who were at the parade.
We did
candies too.
So we might have to float that out at some point.
Okay.
Next another board meeting. So other than that, meeting debrief. Any comments? You got?
I'm glad you remember that parade. It was in my person.
Okay. With that, I will adjourn our meeting.
Marcy. Yeah, can we have a gavel for her?
Yeah, here. At 9:10.
Gavel.
Marcy's final meeting.
All right, so you are adjourning the meeting
at 9:10. Good.